IVM.
The technology revolutions of the last 30 years have disrupted entertainment many times over. From watching grayscale soaps on Doordarshan, we now have options to view entertainment in AR and VR while grazing information about our favorite shows or playing a game alongside the entertainment on TV. Sony Liv broadcasts and streams a large library of entertainment across many languages and genres like sports, fiction, documentary, gaming, movies, etc. The OTT has been leading the multiscreening charge, especially with major content titles like KBC and Indian Idol developing play-along games. Today, I'm talking to Amogh Dusad, SVP and Head, Programming, Partnerships and New Initiatives for the Digital Business at Sony Pictures Networks, to find out how the giant approaches programming and content experience to keep up with the consumer in the 21st century.
Hi Amogh, welcome to the show.
Hi Vineet.
Hi. So you've been at Sony for 10 years. We've worked in the past together while I was at TVF, and I really admire the range of things that you do and the sort of POV that you bring to content. How did this whole role come about, and how did you land up heading content at Sony? It's a long journey, very interesting journey. You started with TAM and measurement, then there was NDTV, Imagine. Can you talk us through this time?
So actually when I also look back at my own journey, I'm surprised in the equal measure, because honestly, as much as planning as one can do, I don't think I'd planned to be there.
Right.
Be where I am. So I had an interesting journey. Let me just talk about Sony, because I think that's where my longest stint has been. So you're right, this is my 10th year in Sony. Great organization. And I think the organization catered well to this 4.5 year itch that mostly people in media tend to get. So every 4.5 years, I've managed to find another role within the organization. I started out with leading the English cluster for programming and acquisition, which is a different world. First introduction to Hollywood as a business, acquiring movies, programming, content on AXN. Then we got into a joint venture with BBC Earth and did infotainment. And then moved on there to our flagship Hindi entertainment channel when a new leadership team was being set up, and spent close to 4 years there. And, in most of the cases, I have not really gone about my career. I don't know whether that's good or bad in terms of, setting goalposts and then going after them.
Right.
I took a call on what came my way. If I felt good about it, I went about doing it. I think a lot of these things become easier if the only thing one is looking to do is to learn something new.
Right.
I think a lot of decision making becomes easier, and I just think a lot of this decision making puts unnecessary pressure when bulk of the variables are not in your control. You're essentially operating out of an equation which you have only 20-25% control. Rest of the cards get dealt by outside world. But what is sure is, if you are keen to learn and keen to sort of do new things, I found it largely an easier play to manage. So, and this came up as a choice to me when I was in Hindi entertainment, leading strategy for our Sony Entertainment Television. And, we thought of bringing Kaun Banega Crorepati back.
Right.
And it had lasted 2014, and 2017 there was a discussion. And we got into a discussion internally saying, should we get it back? And there was an overwhelming support on getting it back. It's an iconic franchise. Mr. Bachchan does it very well. And there were some learnings on what didn't work last time around. But the big question was, what will change this time?
Right.
After 4 years, if the franchise makes a comeback, what is new? And I think that's where bulk of my experience, I've always handled consumer insight close to me. It's always been something that is close to me. I think, and irrespective of the portfolios I've handled, I've always had managed to have a good ear on the ground through the consumer work that we continuously do in an organized way through agencies or other way around, when you interact with people.
Right.
And something that came along there is that, in the consumer work, that KBC was always something that was played in the drawing room while the show was going on.
Right.
So when Mr. Bachchan was asking the question to the hot seat contestants, he was actually asking to the entire family sitting at home, and everybody bases the subject that question was about. Everybody was jumping in to answer. And that's where, KBC sort of democratized across family members itself, because there would be questions around mythology, which probably the grandparents would jump in and answer.
Right.
And there would be something about which the kids would know. And, this was the part that was always there. And during that discussion, a conversation started around partnership with the telco, that time JioTV. And we said, they wanted to enable and they wanted to get into deeper engagement with KBC Play Along. And I was leading it from our side and essentially exploring how can we use technology to make the show younger and get it more interactive so that it doesn't remain, like a one-way communication,
right.
Which teaches something. And that's how stumbled into a sort of second screen interactivity. We did Play Along with JioTV, with Jio for the first time. Next year, we did it on Sony Liv with a bunch of folks who partnered us on technology from Israel. Last year, we did it ourselves on Sony Liv, like a homegrown technology interactive platform.
Wow.
And this year, it's all getting made and there'll be more features that get added. But part of my journey, if I was to correlate here, was I was leading strategy, and this KBC came up as a big opportunity. It's a 3-4 month project, and I completely went headlong into it, and just dedicated myself 2-3 months completely into finding what else can be done, how is the interface, and that was also my first proper exposure to a digital ecosystem,
right,
of how apps work, how questions get fired, how do you manage concurrency, and a completely new world. And I was just sort of enamored by sheer amount of learning. And I said, for somebody who's been in media for almost 15-16 years, I suddenly realized that every day I'm learning, and it was showing up because suddenly I was this cool dude in Sony who knew so many things about tech, because I was interacting with the Jio folks very regularly,
right,
on building this up. And, things went on one or the other, and organization, and due credit to the organization, it's been very, very supportive, even in the moves internally. And when KBC Play Along became a big success, there was an opportunity that do we need to do it as a piecemeal project,
right,
or do we take interactivity as a full function on its own? And a new department got set up. I got the required support from the management team, from my manager. And we went ahead and said, there is television which is dishing out content, and great iconic IPs and shows are coming out, but it's one way. Can we make TV programming be a two-way communication?
Right.
Or to put it simply, is there a possibility to make TV from a laid-back sort of an experience to set up and engage?
Right.
And then it became a journey of exploration. We did Play Along. Then we said, what can we do around singing? What can we do around dancing show? What can we do around fiction? Or how do we get technology to get celebs in? So that's how the journey went on. And then after spending a year and a half setting that up, getting into gaming, an opportunity opened up in the digital business, which is our OTT platform. And last year and a half, I've been trying to contribute and learn in equal measure. But, that's why I was starting. As long as I was open to sort of moving on and learning something new, I think things kept opening on its own in the organization.
I think I heard two very important things right in the answer, and I just want to draw my listeners' attention to this, because the first thing you said was about was something that I truly relate to as someone who's worked in new media for a while, is going out after the unknown, going out and figuring things out, and that sort of curiosity and want to learn has always stood me in good stead. And it's great to see that that's the driving force for the inspiration behind the other thing, which is consumer insights. It's something that's so central to what we do, right? Who is consuming what we're doing, how they're consuming it becomes such an important feedback mechanism for innovation, for doing interesting new things. Because I'm sure when KBC started way back when, the behavior that we're talking about has been around since then, right? Families sitting together and answering questions, I'm sure. But it is now that we have the technology to leverage that insight and that behavior and do something so cool with it. Super amazing to see that laid out right up front. Amogh, thank you for that. Let me ask you this, to just draw back from the technology bit, right? And I struggled with this before, but I'm going to do it right this time. Head of programming, partnerships, new initiatives, and digital business. That's a lot, right? What does your day-to-day look like? How does your role engage with the other teams that I'm sure are part of this? And how does it help in keeping someone who's got insights at the heart of it to sort of captain this role? How does that really work in the day-to-day at Sony?
Just a small correction, Vineet. The role is programming, partnerships, and new initiatives.
All right, okay.
Digital business.
All right,
so these are verticals that I handle within that business.
I promise I will get it right the next time. I'm sorry.
All right. But what doesn't get captured there is the interactivity in the gaming piece.
Right.
That, like you mentioned about consumer insights and analytics is also a function that I work with.
Right.
And that has been something that I've carried as part of my portfolio for almost 12, 13 years now.
Right.
Prior to being in TAM, which itself was a company around the solution. So in that sense, 18 years has been that. And being the voice of the consumer in all business decision is something that I completely enjoy and completely see most amount of value come into business, because especially for a business like media, where you are trying to create content for consumers' tastes and preferences, and every time, every decision you are saying, will this work, pasand aayega, nahi aayega, ye track pasand aayega, it's obvious that you actually want a bounce back from the consumer.
Right.
For some reason, I think the way this has all been channelized, what we are really trying to do is to get consumers' feedback, voice, insight into the creation process.
Absolutely.
In my experience, I've learned that the people that, probably the creative folks are the ones who are most keen to know responses from consumers.
Right.
It just needs to be channelized in the right way. But every creator wants to know. Every creator is creating content for people to love. And early in the journey of that creation process, if they get useful insights on what is working, what is not working, something that can help them improve their process, instead of insights being timed at a time when it is largely passing a verdict on whether it worked or not worked. I think the earlier in the process, if insights come in, then it becomes a lot more constructive, because then the creator is actually seeing some of his doubts getting answered on how consumers are responding. So, and I've been in this business, and it always becomes a sort of a this versus that of creative instincts versus consumer insight, and great content can't be created by consumer feedback. And I genuinely think it is not this versus that. It is great content has to be created by creative expertise. There is no two ways. They're always looking for feedback. A writer, when he writes a screenplay, he would always have his wife as the first person to give feedback. I lead the audio promotions team, and my producer, when he calls me with or shares an edit with me, and I said, how are you feeling about it? And he invariably says, my dad likes it, my son is not okay about it. So inherently, people need feedback because they get so involved and passionately driven towards creating something. And when they put it together, they want people to know whether it's really working or not. Absolutely. It's just that how the consumer insight piece sort of flows into the process. I think it makes most amount of time.
Let me ask you this then. In a world, obviously there was a time when, Henry Ford said, if I ask the consumer what he wants, he will tell me I want a faster horse. That's sort of 120 years ago versus today, right? Where there are entertainment companies like yours and the companies that I've worked at as well, where we're trying to consolidate this feedback that we get from the viewer or from the consumer into creative insights, right? Now, there is feedback that is as amorphous and often pointless as pasand nahi aaya, I didn't like it, not for me, to the point that we have complex, and on the other end we have complex data signals, right? We have decay rates, we have time spent viewing, attention spans, there are like analysis of eye tracking and all of that, right? How do you try to consolidate, or is there a process that you found in your experience that helps consolidate both of these well? And can you give us a couple of examples if you have? Would be something that I'd be totally super interested in.
So I'll tell you how I feel about this, and this is what I've tried to institutionalize, is that I think the understanding of it's very narrow-minded to go with a piece of content and take consumer feedback. You have to do that, but not great insight is going to emerge out of that. I think it's more important to do consumer immersions than consumer feedback.
Sure.
It's about spending that, half an hour chit-chatting with that panwala in Banaras.
Right.
And that is really what I mean by consumer. It's not so much about getting all of them together in one room and saying, oh, I'm going to show you 3 ads, tell me rate out. That is part of the process, but I don't think a genuine spark of creativity or a genuine idea to create something new emerges out of that. So in my mind, that consumer immersion, because what ends up happening is You are creating content for 250 million, at least in television, spread across in the speaking markets. You are sitting in Bombay in one office. Your social circle is 15, 20 people that you hang around with. Absolutely. And if you, God forbid, if you live in Bandra West, then there is Republic of Bandra West, which operates completely differently from the country.
Right. The availability bias in creativity in that sense.
Yeah. So I just think my only piece of advice, and wherever I've been, I've tried to institutionalize, is actually taking people out of offices in Bombay and getting them into actual consumer markets with consumers, with a sari shop owner, or with a panwala, or with a beauty parlor, a lady who's running a beauty parlor as part extension of her household somewhere in Indore. And I think being there from an observationist point of view, instead of asking questions and getting answers, is where I think. So it's, to my mind, it's not about being reactionary. It's about going with an open mind, saying, I'm creating content or creating a business around creating content for these folks. I can spend a couple of days, or at least a day every quarter, just hanging out, go to the places they go to the temple, they go to the sweet shop that they go to, what do they like to eat, what do they chat there about, just being the fly on the wall.
Right.
And it's very difficult to get time from the busy schedules of people, but I've found in my experience, because when I take people there, they also get feedback from how the creative team, the marketing team, all the people have responded. The most enriching experience for them has been around that.
That's very interesting. And again, sort of antithesis to the sort of current trends in content analytics that you see that are also informing production. And I've known Sony to do this for a while. I had a friend way back when he did his summer internship at Sony, and he was sent after his internship, he was sent to UP somewhere to talk to some 32 housewives to get some insights there. So it's very good to see these sort of core ethnographic approaches almost, right? I know, and ethnographic is a big word, to be at the heart of the storytelling, which brings me sort of logically to my next question, which is, when you put yourself there in a sort of non-interventionist, fly on the wall capacity, it's very important to have a point of view, right? To have a philosophy of telling the story, from which point of view Sony, the channel, would tell the story, or your producer or the director would tell the story. Is there a sort of binding philosophy at Sony that keeps you going in terms of the content that you're creating? Bear in mind that what used to be primarily GEC content is now also sports, is also gaming, is also non-fiction. How do you look at trying to tie it all together with a philosophy? Or is there an attempt to do that?
So actually, probably that's the most difficult question to answer. But let me attempt that. We went through this exercise, and I was closely involved with a group of people, and a lot of these things happen with a organization focus on the value that this can drive in.
Right.
So let me start this way, and I don't want to name the gentleman, but he was part of our brand journey when we started in Sony. And I think one of the lasting points that he made, which has stayed with me, it's almost been 5 years, is there is a consumer story, there is a consumer theme that is ongoing. Every consumer that you meet has his or her own story. And the question as a brand or as a marketer that one needs to answer is, what is your brand story? And is your brand story working in resonance with the consumer story? Is it taking the consumer story forward? Or are you in a la-la land just trying to tell your own story, which has no connect with the consumer story? And I think that was that really became a filter for a lot of things that we were trying to do at Sony. So I can very proudly say that the Sony content, when we created a prototype for our characters, for our lead artist, for the kind of stories that we will say, we clearly defined areas that we will not get into.
Right.
For example, any Sony protagonist that you would see, we ensured that they are always financially enterprising.
Right.
She could be running a pickle business. She could be a lawyer. She could be in any form, but we ensured that the women that we are portraying are women who, in their space that the story is set in, have sort of underlined that financial independence in some way, or at least are able to financially support themselves. Because in all our consumer immersions and work, that came out as a strong theme of what mothers wanted their daughters to have.
Right.
All of them said that, we are okay delaying marriage of our daughters by a couple of years, but we just want them to be sufficient enough or capable enough that if there is an adversity in life, they are able to take care of themselves.
Right.
And that is practically how the country thinks. We see a lot of Twitterati and a lot of other conversation, but if you really go down to these small cities, that's how families have adapted to progression or modernism.
Right.
Where they've said, okay, let's try to make the best of both the worlds. And if you create stories which are that's a consumer story, that is the moving consumer stories. If you want consumers to connect with your protagonist and your shows, then that theme, without being shouted out loud, that underlying theme has to cut through.
Right.
And it's not about making marketing propositions out of it. It's just that there is this thread which is running across shows, which we defined as partnership.
Right.
As we said, it is about turning relationships into partnerships. That's what the new India is about. It's about the traditional relationship becomes partnership. It's about that household where everybody in the family wants to become, let's say, better well off. And thereby the daughter-in-law is also going out to work. And the mother-in-law is ensuring that she's taking care of the child when he or she comes back from the school for the 3-4 hours till the mother comes back home.
Right.
And sort of create a cohesive partnership among the different members instead of being sort of straight-jacketed in relationships of protocols. So that's what we have tried to bring into our stories, and you would see across all our protagonists, whether it's Patiala Babes, whether it's any of those shows, that germ of that thought has remained.
I think that's very powerful. I've talked about the power of content or power of entertainment to bring about behavior change and how it can nudge society into a better direction. And what it seems to me, especially on TV, where it becomes such a broad base, right? This process of taking an insight from audiences and then amplifying the positivity in that insight. It's also a very nice loop of feeding back goodness to society and feeding back an aspirational value to society that's already taken hold. So there's a lot of debate, Amogh, and my follow-up to this sort of in a different direction is, how strongly do you believe, as someone who's at the center of so much content creation at a major producer and a major OTT, how strongly do you believe in the power of content to bring about this kind of behavior change? Have you seen, what kind of feedback do you get when you make something that's especially progressive or hits home with a certain section of the audience? That's kind of a complex question. But how strongly do you believe in it, and how well has it been received whenever you've tried it previously?
So, very honestly, I don't think it is. It doesn't get executed probably in the way you've laid it out.
Right.
We are an entertainment platform.
Right.
As a tele. So I don't think we are in the business of really
activism. No, that's not the intent at all. No.
I just think it's about, let me put it this way, कि एक आटे में नमक होता है.
Sure.
And you're primarily, and I don't think we get dissuaded because finally you're running business of entertainment and you're not running entertainment business. It has to make sense. Business only works if people watch the content. You want to create content that engages and gets people to come back every day, or subscribe to our channel, subscribe to our platform to enjoy that content, content that people consume and talk to others about it. And you would always have that content with a little bit of undertone or an underline of what you as a brand believe.
Right.
I think overdoing that kills the entertainment quotient. Underdoing that makes you not very responsible. Right. And it's just about the right mix that you're not creating content just for the heck of creating it and have no boundaries, but you're also not becoming preachy and, letting your sort of activism or your point of view overlay the core of your business. So there is an editorial point of view of what kind of stories we say, what kind of stories we encourage on the platform, what kind of stories we want to say. But I think it's all in the overall pretext of creating, entertaining, engaging content.
Beautiful. I think you put it very nicely. That the message or the brand can't be the cart that gets put before the horse. The story has to be something that cuts through, and the Aate Mein Namak thing makes absolute sense because
completely personal. It's my personal experience as well as point of view, and there are people and different point of views and different platforms who sort of not believe in it as strongly. But I just think I've seen this work. I've seen this get resonated. It is not something that people sort of watch and say, "Oh, we love your point of view." And I think they're saying, I think that's what happens. But across our pieces of content, we've always celebrated. So when you see a show like Kaun Banega Crorepati, last season we did Friday specials.
Right.
And Friday specials, we ensured that the people who we are celebrating on Friday specials are people who are from different walks of life, who have essentially started out as common people, but with their perseverance and patience and by the spirit of contributing back to society, have reached a certain level of stature. Right. Whether it was Dr. Prakash Amte or people like that, we celebrated. I think it gets appreciated. But while we are doing that, it is still an entertainment, knowledge-giving quiz show. And I think that's the beauty of it. It's about how our creative team is able to package all of it together, where there is a messaging. You feel you need to have that nice aftertaste after watching that 1.5 hours of content.
Absolutely.
Aaj kuch acha dekha. And I think if you're able to give that feeling, it's very difficult to crack it. And, that's why creative talent is so valued. And I think Sony is blessed with some of the best creative folks, is because that ability to give a nice aftertaste after the entire meal gets served is what, gets people back. That's what gets people to talk about your brand positively. And it's about keeping that right mix going.
Absolutely. I think you put it very nicely about it being the business of entertainment and not the entertainment business. Let me pivot over to another piece that keeps bringing audiences back. And we talked about it a little bit right at the beginning. This is about technology and content. And I mean, what used to be a sort of linear approach in content consumption, you had 2 or 3 devices, a TV, a radio, you could go and watch cinema somewhere, versus now everybody's a content creator, right? Everybody, right? People who sell you internet are also content creators. People who sell you sabji are also content creators. Everybody's a content creator, right? But there is a certain expertise that a legacy creator brings, right? But what's also happened is legacy creators have started moving more towards technology as well. And you talked about this in the beginning. How important has it been since in the 4-5 revolutions of content and technology that you've done? How important has it been to innovate in this direction for you at Sony? I know it's definitely added an entire new layer of engagement, and might I say other players have tried to copy or also build their own models as well, right? But how central is it now to how you plan content? Are there opportunities that you try and envision within the content itself, where multi-screening, where technology behaviors can be brought in? Has it become that central to you yet?
Actually, more it seems to get complicated. I just think probably we get, at least in my view, we get swayed by the complication a lot more. I honestly think it is not. So let me just lay out how I think these different changes in technology, especially last 5 years with small screen, what has happened. The challenge for content creator from last 30 years has been to hold consumers' attention.
Right.
I don't think the brief has changed. Whether it's cinema hall, whether it's television set, whether it's DVD, it has always been about holding consumer interaction. It is when people watch movies, there is a saying, somebody said that, if somebody shifts in his chair while watching a movie, you've delivered a weak moment.
Right.
So I think that challenge has remained. Now, only thing that technology has given, to my mind, has created a vast repertoire of use occasions which were not existing.
Right.
So television was a use occasion. I would come home every night and watch TV, and content was delivered keeping that use consumer reality in mind.
Right.
What is happening now with technology and with smartphone and data is the use occasion for the consumer has changed. Now he's watching while going to office. Now he's watching it while waiting at a shop. Now the consumer is watching it just before going off to sleep. Now the consumer is watching it alone compared to watching it with the family.
Yeah.
And I think the use occasion has changed. And for these use occasion is where technology has created these use occasions. And now the content creators are dealing with ability to still hold the user's attention, but in a different use. In a different use.
Right.
So, when Quibi came about and Katzenberg launched that platform, right, I think it is trying to address a use occasion.
Right.
That not all video consumption is actually happening sitting in front of the TV for a 2-hour long session. People are waiting for their coffee at a coffee shop and wanting to watch something. And then probably is the idea that comes in. Obviously, it depends on how well it gets executed. I'm not updated on how well the platform is doing.
Oh, it's not. It's doing very badly.
So I think the concept really was that there is a different use occasion.
Absolutely.
Now, whether that gets served by a TikTok or an Instagram or a Facebook one, or for it's about content creators. But I think that's how I would lay out the technology role and not really complicate much, because सिर्फ जिस जगह और जिस तरह से कंज्यूम हो रहा है कंटेंट वो चेंज हुआ है, पर कंटेंट का डिलीवरेबल स्टिल सेम है. अब अगर यूजर का ओकेजन 4 मिनट का है, then obviously a 120-minute movie is not the best thing that you would get a movie to start. But can you create something which is compelling as a 2-minuter? Probably you have an audience there.
No, absolutely. I think you really put it out very simply when you talked about the use occasions of consumption and how we're sort of optimizing around new use occasions that are coming on. And while QB has not done well for various other reasons, it's not the insight that is wonky there. They also wanted to create 12-minute content produced as well as a 120-minute movie. So with that intent is what the insight is getting activated.
I had read somewhere, and let me probably, for the interest of your listeners, add that piece of this entire concept of micro mood moments,
right?
Which are essentially 4 to 6 minutes and which happen multiple times in the day. And a lot of the short form content and platforms that we speak about have actually optimized on those micro moods,
right,
or ability to cater to that little occasions that get created.
I think while that insight is something that's holding true more and more with TikTok and Instagram, and now Instagram capitalizing on Reels and still keeping in that 15-second space, right? Whatever, an 8 to 10 minute micro mood moment or a 6 to 10 minute micro mood moment holds 30 TikToks or 40 TikToks for someone at this point. So we're definitely looking at, that's also mass consumption. It's not just a little bit of consumption. So people are looking at different use occasions and building that out. However, the QB example just kind of brings it into stark contrast for me that it's still very hard to get right. It's not something that's a given that if you create a product for optimizing for this kind of content and you throw a shit ton of money at the problem and say, I'm going to have Chrissy Teigen do a TV show format on digital now, and now as people are going to watch it, it's not that simple, right? I think the opportunities are there, but for the kind of money that is at play in content now, and especially with Sony and so many offerings and diversification, it's hard to get right, is my sense. Let me ask you this: while second screening is something that's happened, I see a massive shift, and a very delightful shift for me, because I'm an avid gamer and consumer of gaming content as well, is the fact that mainstream OTT platforms now have gaming content available. There is gaming IPs being developed. I know Akshat quite well from Nordwian, and Akshat is super delighted at everyone from Sony to Airtel to everybody else being super invested in gaming. How did your journey with this start, and where is Sony at in its sort of thrust with gaming?
So I think it started with a very basic thought that, and actually this is something that probably the folks in West have done it very well, on ability to optimize and monetize IPs across platforms, is something that, there's a lot of learning that has come from those markets. And the thought was very simple. Sony Pictures Network has some iconic IPs which are 10, 12, 15 years old, still have huge consumer recall, things like CID, bulk of these shows that have come out, Balveer, Aladdin, Kapil Sharma.
Right.
And we're just creating TV shows around that. But the point is, what is in consumers' mind around that IP is much more than just that content. And not every time is the user is attached to that IP, but not every time is the user in the position or in the mood to sort of watch that content. Is there another way that you can get the consumer to interact with those IPs? Is where the thought came about. Saying, the kids today are very well aware of CID because CID played when they were younger in their households.
Right.
But would they watch CID today? Probably they would not, because they've been exposed to different kind of detective shows that have come from internationally, and there is a way of storytelling there. But are they excited about gaming? Yes, they are. Can the CID iconic franchise come in form of gaming? It seemed like a easy sort of an answer, which is where our journey started. As we speak now on Sony Liv, we have a hyper casual gaming platform built around our IPs. All most popular genres are there. You have Ludo, you have Knife Ninja, you have car chases, you have bubble shooter, you have card games. All of them have been
Beautiful.
They've all been built around our IP. And it's also about that micro mood. Every time the user launches the app, he might not want to see, or she might not want to see a video, but want to play probably 2-3 rounds of Cricket Fever or a cricket game. And why not make that available as an extended offering? So it's doing quite well on the platform. We are in early stages. The beta phase got over in May, and now scaling this up. And I think it sits well with our entire play along piece on the platform and the gaming and some bit of video interactivity that we are intending to do. So I think it's a coherent piece. It's shaping up well.
I think it sounds fantastic. I remember early in our time when I was working on a platform with TVF Play as well, it was one of the strategy directions that we'd also explored about to, build, because we were very, very niche, right? So to build on retentivity and stuff like that. But I can only imagine the scope of doing something like this with the kind of IP library that you have and the characters and how well loved those characters are. I honestly believe that the art form of the 20th century was cinema, and we saw cinema go from Birth of a Nation to Titanic and a little bit beyond. I think 21st century is going to be interactivity, is going to be all about gaming, and it's great to see such great characters come into this this atmosphere as well. Are you a gamer, Amogh? How is the response to the gaming content in your house, especially with your son?
It's quite a bit of challenge on the lighter note, because you want to keep kids away from the screen, but you're creating games all the time, and especially to work from home when I'm doing my gaming calls,
right?
And betas of the games, and my son comes and says that you are playing games all day and you're not allowing me to play. So honestly, it's a tough one. I am a bit cautious as a parent,
right?
So I would rather ration some time. But he's an avid game follower. He watches Minecraft YouTube videos like there is no.
Yeah.
So it's quite a bit of thing. In terms of me, I've had my days with Super Mario and Contra and that world. And I really want to bring those games back, because I think there is an audience. Nostalgia is a great feeling.
Most definitely, yeah.
Especially in the uncertain times, I think people want to relive their memories. So when we did a show called Ye Un Dino Ki Baat Hai on SCT, which was a 90s set love story, I would imagine why would Contra not work and why would Super Mario not work, and bring them into. I think it's a great emotion to tap. And finally, it's all about giving user a nice, happy feel. And probably gaming can also do that. Everything doesn't have to be, high-end kind of games.
Right.
So that's the kind of gamer I am. But I understand my limitations, and that's why I have got people in my team who are who live and breathe just games.
That's brilliant to know. I mean, and I completely agree with the bit about nostalgia. I think with either Ye Un Dino Ki Baat Hai or Ye Meri Family, for people this time around, nostalgia is like traveling to another time, right? Even if the media from that nostalgia, you show someone a dialing, like the ring dial telephone, and they're just like, dude, what is this? Like, phones are this size now. So I totally think nostalgia is underexplored in India for sure. And Contra and Mario definitely are very much part of that nostalgia. Before I move on from gaming, let me ask you this. Sports is an important part of the programming on Sony. Do you think esports is going to at some point challenge the hegemony of sports as the sort of pinnacle of programming or most valuable programming in India? How do you think that sort of scales is tipping in the future?
So, I always resist getting into this debate of this or that. I just think in all my learning it has always been this and that. And it's a huge country. People, when TV came about, people spoke about radio and print, and then digital came and TV will go. I think there is enough Indias to sort of cater to all of this. So no doubt about esports potential. It is rising. It's catching up very, very fast. Business revenue streams have to get aligned in a much more relevant way than they are today. But consumer business follows where consumers are going. In that direction, I think esport is very, very promising. No two ways about it. But I don't see it as a challenge or a sort of context to or a competition to sport
traditional
broadcasting.
Sports, sure.
Just like you would, just because other sports are rising doesn't mean cricket's popularity is going down.
Right.
But it's just that probably it will get balanced out a bit, and you will have many more sports. And I think it's generally good. So there should be more many sports. There should be esports. I think all of it can
coexist.
Survive. Yeah, right. We have loads of people. You will get enough Indias to cater to all the different league caps. Like we have football on the platform, right? We get amazing action there, and very, very passionate group of fans there. And the cricket series just started 2 days back on Liv, and again, superb. People are very keenly watching a non-India test match because they just want to see the action, that commentary, that sound of Michael Holding and an English ground with the ball swinging.
I think people have missed it. People have missed it for sure. That's for sure. I think it's great to hear it put like that. I think there are enough Indias to cater and enough content to create to cater to all of them.
I think it's hard for me because if you take sides, then you have to be on the opposite side. You have to be on one side. But our intention is to offer all of this to users. So I would rather believe that the way reality is getting shaped is this and that, and not really this or that.
And I do think that's the right way to look at it from a creator perspective. I think that's a more inclusive content future in that sense. Speaking of the future of content, let me ask you a couple of questions before we round this off. The pandemic and the disruptions in coronavirus is a very, very real thing for the entertainment industry. Countless jobs have been put on hold, projects are getting cancelled, movies getting delayed, journalists losing their jobs. So much doom and gloom around. How's Sony kind of dealing with it? How's the response been? And how are you looking at the next year or two from a recovery perspective?
I think I've spoken enough about it in different forums. So there is no two ways about that we are in challenging times. And challenging largely because the line of sight is not very clear. But I think the direction that has been taken and the calls that have been made are fundamentally to get things going. I think we'll stabilize to the new cliche, which is the new normal. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot has been written about it. But, that seems to be the reality. I think this entire piece is going to make psychological, behavioral, and business level changes, which are irreversible. And I think that is happening. Organizationally, it's been a great organization, and I think it's been very, very supportive on the entire piece and how we moved about managing the last 3-4 months. The organization has shown a great deal of maturity and sensitivity to what is happening to people's reality around them. And now things are coming back. I think TV production is on. We should start seeing come back on TV. Things will start to come back, but there has been a significant impact, to put it mildly, and I think it will take some time for it to recover. So I think it's a foregone conclusion now that people are expecting a V-shaped recovery. I don't think that is happening.
Right.
It is more looking like a slow recovery that will happen.
Yeah. But, more of like a bathtub recovery is what it seems like to me.
It seems to be going in that direction.
Yeah, but switching back from that, it's good to hear that the company is supporting people. I think the entertainment industry's response at large has been one of trying to cope with maturity, trying to follow as many rules and laws as possible, trying to make sure that the people are safe first up before anything else. Amogh, as we wind this episode down, I want to ask you a couple of questions. You already told me about the stuff that you're doing that's exciting right now, but as someone who's spent nearly 2 decades, what is keeping you excited about content next couple of years? What are some trends that you're looking at sort of learning about and getting into?
So I think from a professional point of view, we've just had a relaunch as a platform. And I think that is what is keeping me really excited because we're on to building a new platform. I've been part of almost 4 launches in last 12 years. So a launch is a great time. It's extremely hectic, very high pressure situations, but it's always good to be part of a journey where you try to create something afresh or relaunching something. So that keeps us excited. We worked on the business plans. We put and nothing works. Nothing brings more joy than an Excel sheet translating into reality.
Absolutely.
And so that's what is immediately keeping me excited and hope that all the plans that we put together, our calendar of events and how we go about building a business, how do they materialize in next couple of quarters, in next 6 to 8 quarters. We have an ambitious plan on how we want to take this product up, the content that we want to offer, how do we place ourselves in context of competition. So that is what is sort of keeping me excited. And secondly, the good thing that I've learned about digital is that every day you're dealing with experts,
right?
And there is so much expertise in the ecosystem that whether it's analytic platforms, whether it's video solutioning, whether it's interactivity, you're always reaching out and learning on what all can be done, what all is happening internationally. So you are always at the cusp of
so new possibilities, sort of.
And every day is a completely a new learning. Right. So I don't know whether when I go to colleges to take sessions, and I am mostly in ears listening to students, because first they are a lot more native to digital than I am. I'll honestly be hybrid. And secondly, that's what digital does to me, because it's such a new industry that you really have any length of experience to talk about. Television, I can talk about with 12, 15 years, but digital it is pretty much an equal ground.
Right.
So if it unsettles sometimes, because the distance or the advantage one gets on a traditional medium by years of experience gets covered up very, very fast in digital.
Right.
So if you spend 5 years, you will see people catching up to that in a couple of years. So that keeps you on your toes. You want to learn new things. You want to ensure that the human part is managed well along with the tech part. But it's always a new learning. And I think I've just turned 40 last month. And,
congratulations. Happy birthday, sir.
To be in this decade with sort of a learning cap on.
I love it. I love the way you put it. I remember very highly respected ad man in our industry. I once went to, he'd called me because he was launching a book and he wanted to get some insight into how to do it on digital. And I said, why don't you do memes? And he said, what is a meme? And I explained to him what a meme was, and he said, if you make a meme, I'll put you in jail because that's copyright fraud. So from seeing people who are at that end of the spectrum to seeing you take that up as a challenge and sort of roll with it, it's super inspiring. My last question about your the new avatar of Sony going forward is, if someone were to come and pitch a show to you, what would be your recommendation to them? How should they structure it to you, or what should they think of in their story?
I think the way team is evaluating concepts is with a certain kind of nuance on the kind of stories you want to bring on the platform. And there are lots of talent and there are lots of platforms. So first of all, it's a great time to be a storyteller.
Right.
Because there is, not only are there more opportunities, there's also a lot more freedom on how story needs to be told. And that is getting resonated or getting good thumbs up from the consumers back. Because consumers are asking for authenticity,
right?
And they are saying that show it to us how it actually happens, and don't sort of brush the reality away.
Right.
And they want authenticity, and I think that is what is keeping a lot of creators motivated and charged up. Honestly, we don't have too many limitations because it's a ongoing. It's a very, very new platform, and it's a new industry in itself. And I think it will go through, people will learn in terms of doing different kind of stories and then settle into a certain pattern and some differentiation. So at this stage, I would rather have, stories that come to us and go to our creative team for evaluation or feedback or discussion, as true as the maker wants it to be.
Right.
And not really do a business PowerPoint on a story that you think will connect. And I think OTT is giving that platform, and I think that's how OTT concepts are being
Absolutely.
And it's a lot more art than science. And I think this will happen. A lot of learnings will emerge empirically on what works and episode lengths and a lot of all of that. But I think there is a hidden contract of authenticity that happens in OTT between the creator and the audience.
Right.
And that expectation, the audience, the consumer might not voice it. But, and this is something, this hidden contract of authenticity is something I picked up from that book on Pixar, Creativity.inc.
Right, creativity, yeah.
And he talks about one of the values they perceive, and value is this commitment to the consumer that we are authentic. And, I remember reading that when Finding Nemo was being finalized and screenplays were being done, the animators did a 30-day scuba diving course to just see the world the way it is, so that when they put it out, that is what hidden contract of authenticity is. That Absolutely. As a consumer, I might not have done scuba diving, but I should have trust in you as a brand that if this is the way ocean looks, must be because that's the way you are showing it. And it's a great sign. I think that's how it needs to be. At least for some time, I think it should be sort of not couched into very, very tight definitions, and let it be more driven by authenticity and passion. And science and Excel sheets will come later.
Absolutely. I think it's absolute music to any creator's ears, contract of authenticity between the creator and the audience, and a little bit of experimentation, a little bit of surprise, a little bit of whatever it is that makes stories good. My last question to you, Amogh, before I let you go, it's a question I ask every guest before we wrap up. I'd like you to share with my listeners a piece of entertainment. Could be a movie, a book, a song, could be a meme, but anything that's close to your heart or has left an impact on you through your life and career that you'd share with my listeners, please.
So, very quickly, I'm a native wisdom addict. Right. And this came to me by Taleb. When I'm a big fan, and I'll honestly admit I only understand 40% of what he writes.
Right.
But that 40% is good enough for me to, really know that there is something great there.
Right.
And one of the things he talks about is anything that stands through the test of time and is able to deal through volatility and randomness and still stays true is something that you should put your hand on.
Right.
So, in some ways, that makes me give a lot of value to content that has had repeat value.
Right.
So Seinfeld is my comfort content.
I love it.
And because I have probably gone back to Seinfeld 20 times, I think it cuts that piece for me. In terms of books that I pick up, I try to use that while one wants to be updated and pick up the latest one. That is in the market, and especially the one that Bob Iger has just published, and that's also a recommended read. But I think there is a value on literature that has stayed and survived for 500 years and 700 years, and there's a rediscovery that happens every time you go back to that.
Right.
Whether it is as something as simple or as known as Gita. I can vouch that every time you go back, any version that you read, every time you go back, you'll pick up something, a new meaning, because your context in life has changed. And that piece of literature, the fact that it has survived over such a long time is because it is able to stay relevant with changing human context.
Right.
So at any point in time when people have read it, and that's not to say Bhagavad Gita, I'm saying any form of literature or any form of books or a piece of content that has stayed through long time, I tend to lean towards them that whenever I am sort of wanting to align myself better or just get a little comfortable or looking for an insight, because I found a lot of modern day insights also emerge out of that. Urdu poetry is a big solace for me.
Right.
I actually at one point in time got trained by Ustad Ibrahim Darwish on how to read and write Urdu. At one point in time I was so fascinated by the language and I learned how to write it and all of that. That's almost 17 years back.
In Urdu, that would make you a Chupa Rustam. I mean, come on, you know how to read and write.
Yeah, but it's a fascinating language. Stuff that you read same with Ghalib. You read Ghalib every time, leaves some new meaning back. So
I like to call it, it's like a kaleidoscopic wisdom in things that have stood the test of time. You read it that time and then you read it 10 years ago and you turn it a little bit and it still sort of makes sense and gives you that little bit of push. I think I've done about 30 or so episodes of this podcast, and that was by far the most insightful answer to that question I have ever got. With that, I'm going to thank you for your time today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, sir. Always uncover some new way of looking at this strange and beautiful industry that we all work in. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you had a good time as well.
Thank you so much, Vineet. Thank you so much.
It was great having you on the show. That's it for this episode of Storytellers and Story Sellers. This is Vineet Kanabar saying goodbye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money and Intel. Before I tell you about some of the shows that we have for you this week, I really wanted to really point out the incredible efforts of our host and our team. We've been able to maintain most of our production schedule in this lockdown, which is going into 4 months now. And I couldn't be happier with the fact that our hosts and team have been able to just get all of this stuff out so incredibly well. So I just really wanted to call them out for that and thank them for their support in this time. And since I spent so much time talking about that, and I want to get you out of here quickly, let me give you a quick update on a few shows that you should check out this week. On Siders, we had Amish Tripathi, really interesting discussion, both of them dive deep into history. Monty Panesar was on Edges and Sledges, another really cool show. On Advertising is Dead, Tanmay Bhatt showed up. That was a cool episode. Malini Agarwal, also probably better known as Miss Malini, showed up on Absolutely Right. It's just been an absolutely gangbusters week in terms of the kind of guests we've had and the conversations we've had on the network. Please do check some stuff out. And with that, we hope to see you again next week.
Are you looking for India's most awesome cricket podcast? Are you now tired of listening to the same old guys drone on about cricket everywhere? Edges and Sledges is a weekly cricket podcast hosted by 3 fans of the game, Varun, DJ, and myself, Ashwin. It was established in early 2018, has over 60 episodes now, and is of course now proud to be on the IVM Podcast Network. Each week, we get together from 3 different time zones, the USA, the UK, and Singapore, and we talk about things from the world of cricket, with a focus on Indian cricket. We often interview special guests from all around the world, including former cricketers and cricket media personalities. So check out Edges and Sledges, the cricket podcast, now on the IVM network.